Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley.
Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab. I'm your host, Randy Johnston, with my co-host, Brian Tankersley. Today, we'd like to talk about AssurancePrep. This particular organization is an outsourcing organization that we respect the management team greatly. And I want to help you think this through because many of you are experiencing staff shortages and don't have access to good professionals. You've got increasing costs in your own marketplace. You're probably having change management with so much technology change going on and looking to deploy innovative solutions. You're also cognizant of your client and team experience. And if you're in particular working in audit comp and review, whether it's internal audit or external audit quality is going to become much more of an issue. And we think that this particular outsourcing group, which has focused so much effort around audit, may help you with preparing for audit of the future. So with that kind of a setup there, Brian, that's a lot of concepts to chew. Now, again, we've got several accounting technology labs on outsourcing, but there's some big industry trends that I think might be helped by the outsourcing model. So, Brian, what do you think about there?
Well, the firms are adopting these centralized delivery model outsourcing services, they really can scale at levels that and again add remove people as needed at levels that we really can't in this country. And one of the reasons, honestly, is that the pay scale for these folks compared to their local market, they're getting paid above market to work in this outsourced thing, even though it's well below what you would have to pay in your local market. So we're really, we're doing the arbitrage here where we're buying low and selling high. So it gives you access to talent in these other locations. The centralization simplifies your technology rollout. You also have some specialization in here that helps you improve audit quality because if somebody's never done an audit before, they're not always the most useful person to you on the job when they first kick in, and so this helps there. And again, your client and team experience is also improved because we're not just working. It's not just total amateur hour with these folks because they've done these things before. So, again, the principles behind AssurancePrep have been doing this for, I can't remember how many years, but a long time. Again, the president CEO is actually out of Toronto, and the guy that leads the U.S. is actually a former Capital Confirmation founder that now is separated from them now that they were acquired by Thomson. So there's a lot of there's been a lot of attention to outsourcing tax and bookkeeping. This is really one of the first ones that's really hitting hard when it comes to outsourcing audit in here. Randy, what kinds of audit services do they actually work with?
Well, you are correct, Brian. Their focus is all around audit. And so besides just a general commercial audit, and I'll speak across multiples and then we'll pick up on the commercial audit, but they do some tax and CAS as well. So notice it's not only audit, but their specialty is clearly commercial audits, pension plan audits. They also do internal audit work, which is, again, something you don't see a lot of. So if you're an industry listener, an internal audit piece might help you there. And, along the line then, if it's an audit related piece, they're in it. So, in terms of Brian, I know you've introduced yourself for years as a recovering auditor. I'm going to let you pick up here because I think they have a number of the audit procedures covered well, and they perform all sorts of tasks in your audit engagements.
Yeah, so they're actually set up to go in, and they specifically say that they will use your firm's technology and preferred templates. So this is a situation where you can get your little idiosyncrasies and pet peeves handled as opposed to having to hew to their personal preferences in there. But they'll do engagement letters, legal letters, confirmations, bank reconciliation testing. They'll go through and do the AR subledger work and do the confirmations and sampling and so forth. They'll go through and identify AR allowance for doubtful accounts items in there that don't meet certain criteria. So they'll help you with re-aging documents, re-aging the ledger and things like that. For AP, they'll do the search for unrecorded liabilities. They can also do inventory price testing, tie things out to the final inventory and do net realizable value and obsolescence testing, and do the revenue test of details in here. Now, when we get over to pension audits, this is an area where, again, they can do most of the tasks associated with this. We do have to be a little careful in here using offshore labor just because there are some certain things like Social Security numbers that you really can't or that you really want to think through how you're handling that. And, for under Circular 230 for the IRS, for example, it says that you really need to have those Social Security numbers masked off. That having been said here, as we look at this, they can do a lot of the testing you've got to do. So your contributions, eligibility, payroll testing, the investment income allocation, rollover testing, non-discrimination testing, remittance testing, distribution testing, and note receivable testing. They're set up to do all those very nicely. Yeah. They also do outsourcing for tax and CAS, and they do everything from just organizing documents all the way up to prep of personal, corporate, and partnerships, as well as going in and doing tax planning, which we now call tax advisory engagements as well.
Yeah. So additional piece that they'll do is outsource bookkeeping and other functions within a finance department, as Brian called out earlier, from an audit perspective, being able to do AR and AP. But with this particular group, one of the things that's a pretty important call out is they will train people on your platform, your procedures, your work papers, and do it your way. Now, others are trying to do this, but I don't believe it's quite as good. And another unique offering of AssurancePrep, at least maybe I shouldn't use the word unique, but it's certainly not often done, is working on internal audit. Now, as Brian knows, I'm actually on an internal audit committee for a board that I serve on. And so I've become far more sensitive to that simply because of that role. But the control testing, the financial audit work that's done, the operational audits where we go through those every meeting, and compliance audits, this team will help an internal audit team for extra labor. And I can tell you that we worked for years trying to hire additional internal auditors. We had the budget, we couldn't find the people. And to me, that's the repeated story on outsourcing. With unemployment rates being what they are here in the U.S., it's going to be hard for you to find the right people when you look for accounting skills. So if you've got clients that have an internal audit department that are short of labor, in my mind, AssurancePrep is actually a good recommendation for your firm to make to your clients for that particular role as well.
Well, and honestly, I mean, if you think about it here, you look at the skill sets that they have and the service, the specific areas that they can help with, including control testing and helping support the external auditors or financial audits, operational compliance. They also do some fraud audits, performance audits, follow-up, as well as vendor and contract audits. So they really cover the whole gamut, and they get quite a bit deeper into the things like performance audits and vendor audits and operational audits that internal auditors do. that you really don't see that you really don't have an analogous skill set in your average person coming in. So in many ways, I think you've got because you've got folks that have many more years of experience than you might be able to hire locally, because again, they make a higher rate compared to the local pay scale, as opposed to what you have in your local market. You got a lot of opportunity there again to get a really sharp person with this.
Yeah, and I'm much more sensitive than I used to be to the vendor and contract audits, Brian, simply because supply chain dependencies got very exposed during the pandemic period.
Yeah.
But I am also amazed at the security compromises that are in the vendor supply chain today. And again, because of banking regulations, which you know as well, there are some serious dependencies, and we have similar exposures in the accounting profession that I think have been overlooked. And we have so many regulations we're trying to follow. We don't even have time to really think about those dependencies that are out there
and
in the
and I
profession.
and those problems are very real. I actually just yesterday was working on a presentation that we're going to be doing in our K2 accounting technology conferences for CPA societies around the U.S. and Canada. And one of the things that I dug into and spent about an hour on was sub processors. And it's amazing how many when you start reading the end user license agreements and the privacy policies and all these other things, you don't realize how many folks may be actually looking at your data that you're putting into these cloud applications. And so the nice thing about using a service like these guys is that you know exactly who it is. And you have people in the United States and in Canada that can speak to it, and that are setting up a service here that want to do it right. And I think that's a big benefit here of having a service like this, because they're not going to, if they have somebody leave, they'll find somebody quickly and step back up.
Yes. So one of the things that I became convinced of with AssurancePrep, and again, remember, Brian and I have reviewed many, many outsourcers. And so we are only talking about a few here in the accounting technology lab that we think have good reputations and good skill sets that are extraordinary in different areas. It's clear that AssurancePrep has extraordinary capabilities in audit. And so if you need to outsource, non-complex activities, and you want to increase your operational efficiency, and you want to have high quality with better client service and time savings and improve the technology adoption, that's part of what you can drive with outsourcing to the right group. So, Brian, I think from that vantage point, are there any closing thoughts that you have?
I think the tax and the bookkeeping folks are where we spend a lot of time talking about outsourcing. But given the remote work and the electronic document management systems we have, and the ability to have folks working on remote systems like Citrix and Terminal Services and others through hosting companies, we've really got an opportunity here to tap into a labor source for audit where we couldn't do that. We just couldn't do that 20 years ago, because we had to go out and have human beings sitting at the client's office. We don't have to do that anymore, and this can really help you meet your client's needs without being hamstrung by the staffing issues that we have in the U.S., as well as the talent shortage we have in many markets. Like I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it's just brutal trying to find people. So I think that's where this really fits well in this.
Yeah, that makes some sense. In fact, as you were summarizing your thoughts there, I was thinking about the transition that's occurring in audit platforms, and there'll be a bunch of new learning for your auditors, and the remote access will become easier with that. And even going back to your obscuring Social Security numbers comment earlier in the podcast, it seems to me that these new platforms may assist us with that. And that has been a fault in a lot of the tax platforms where they actually weren't obscuring tax Social Security numbers and Fed IDs when things were outsourced offshored. Well, we wanted you to have at least a little bit insight into this particular company's offering, AssurancePrep, which specializes in audit, both internal and external, but it can also handle tax and CAS. We look forward to having you with us in a future accounting technology lab. Good day.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.